All right, so we I think Jim is going to join us, but we can start as we do have Hazel, myself, and Danny as the quorum. Uh, I think let's see. You have the roll call on who's here.
Yes, yeah, I got um, Frank, Hazel, Chad, Danny, Rich, and myself.
Got it. And I don't believe there's. I can't. Oh, hold on. I don't see anyone else in the queue anywhere.
Nope.
Nope. But
Yeah, I
the,
don't have anybody else either.
Okay. So, approval of minutes. I don't think Mark sent out the minutes from the last time that I know of. I could have missed them, so please stop me if I'm wrong. Anybody else see them?
I don't see them attached in there.
Yeah, I didn't see them either. So we'll push that to the next meeting. Um, Public comment. I don't believe there's anyone on the phone who is from the public. So we can skip through that. I don't know of any new business. Um, Anyone else have anything else that's new business? I don't know what that would be. Um,
I don't
if
have any
not,
I don't have any new business. I have a couple questions. Maybe that would wait for later.
okay, you hold them, and then
Yep,
we'll go through this and see if they get answered or if
there
we
you
talk
go.
about them.
Sure.
Okay. Uh, Old business update on the referendum. So, if you didn't know, on I went to the RTM meeting on the 13th. Um, I learned a lot. I learned how the RTM works. Um, it was interesting. Um, but the bottom line was they did bring it to their financial board, and what I learned is their financial group or their financial committee of the RTM actually discussed it behind closed doors in their committee. They had 7 people on their committee, 5 were present. They talked about the referendum and how it was written, and had no issues with it. So they came back to the board, and then when it was their turn on the agenda, they talked about it and kind of said that. There were some questions from the RTM folks. Most of them were um, not a lot to do with the actual voting part of it. It was just clarification on what they were actually voting for. Um, Having the financial person describe to them that they were actually voting on the verbiage. It wasn't like them saying, I think this is the best idea in the entire world or anything like that. They were doing that by pushing it forward, I guess, but it wasn't like they were a stamp of approval. It was more like, yes, we understand, we like it. Um, so I did speak to them about what we've been doing and some of the things we're trying to do moving forward. I gave them homework assignments, kind of in jest, but I did give them homework assignments and asked them to go to the high school and walk around the track and tell me what they thought of the amenities around the track, particularly the bleachers and the restrooms and all the wonderful things that are there. And then I said, when you're done with that, the next week I want you to run to any other local high school in the area and tell me what you think about that. And we'll just leave it at that. So they chuckled, I think, um, but it was okay. So I spoke to them and then they did their thing. They did vote, and I think I wrote it down. It was 20 out of 23 votes, it was 21 in favor, 0 not in favor, and 2 abstentions. So it passed the RTM and moved on to the next event. Chad was also there. Um, Mark was also there as well. Um, the just so for your FYI, he came in a little late to speak, but the football, the Groton no, he is Groton Mystic Falcon football, but he also is the president, I guess, of the Thames River, the older group of kids, I think they are, if you would. Anyway, so he didn't speak because he missed the speaking session, but he was also there pushing the cause as well. Um, and Chad was there. So if Chad, if I missed anything that you would like to embellish on with what that is, and then I did try to go through the document about the 42-page document about what's next. Um, and you can go from there. I know it's happening in the near term. I couldn't quite figure out what was next. So Chad, if you don't mind, that'd be great.
Yep. The only thing I'd clarify for the RTM is the subcommittee that met did not meet behind closed doors. I wouldn't put it that way. They have a subcommittee meeting. It is open to the public. It is available to the public. But it is a smaller group of people. It is just the 7 people from RTM. That is the finance board. They do meet in advance to be able to then they're supposed to be the ones that look into it, do their real due diligence, and then promote it to the whole RTM for the vote. So it did go through that whole process. And I would agree with Frank that really the questions were really more about process and everybody understanding that they're not voting to spend the 14 million right now. They're just voting to approve the language to go out to the referendum for the bond. So that was most of the questions. Otherwise, after that, it does go back to the council, I believe. They get the final last stab at the language. Think Mark sent around the language to everybody. I can put it on the screen again if you want to see it. There has been some tweaks to the language. And actually, why don't I do this? We've been working on a 2-page flyer for kind of referendum information for you guys to be able to have, and also then to be able to distribute. And so I will just start by sharing that because it has some of the information on it too. So can everybody see that now? Perfect. So this I'll just quickly look at it and then we can zoom in a little bit if we need to. This is what it's looking like right now. I'll email it out to the group. Please feel free to edit it and change things and make suggestions. It is a working draft at the moment that we're working through. So let everybody know about the November 4th referendum, why we need it. This is a little bit wordy, but we'll go through it. Basically, the formation of the task force. You guys have been doing this for 5 years to get to this point. Between the task force and the council, we got this 4-phase approach. Right now, we are sticking to the 4-phase. I know at one point we talked about 5, making the softball field kind of phase 5. The council, in the first thing that they passed, they called it a 4-phase project. And so they got very confused when we added a 5th phase to it by saying softball maybe. So right now they've asked us to go back to calling it a 4-phase, with softball still being a maybe. And then maybe it happens in the 4th phase, maybe it's a 5th phase, or maybe it never has to happen. So here we're showing what is phase 1, which is basically most of the Fitch High School improvements, the field, the track, the grandstands, the lighting, the restrooms, the concessions, ticketing, storage, and parking and ADA, everything that we've talked about. This I think we want to do some work on, right? This is the town-wide deficiencies that were noted. Basically all the field shortages, the community field shortages that we've been dealing with the whole time, and then some of the high school deficiencies that we're calling them. Again, instead of trying to go through all of them right now, I'll probably send them around. I think we can work on the verbiage of this a little bit to make sure we're explaining it accurately and succinctly enough that, this is the why, right? This is why we need to be able to do phase 1. And this is really geared towards, there's a lot of information, people that might not have been paying attention for the last 5 years and have no idea that you guys have been doing all this work. So we're trying to give them enough of that background to get up to speed and explain some of that, explain what phase 1 is, explain what phase 2, 3, and 4 are. And then we get into a little bit more into the phase 1 with the image of what's on there, the new facilities spelled out a little bit more clearly the tax impact. So this is the actual tax chart that we've gotten from town hall for the next 15 years. This is the amount of the payments that are estimated and the amount of the, impact per 100,000. It ranges from $14 for the first year, into the 30s in the middle, and then back down into the 20s by the end of the bond. What we did in kind of the impact statement is calling it the 15-year bond, and we're averaging that estimated yearly property tax impact of $28 per 100,000. So if you average this all out, it's $28 per 100,000. For the typical $250,000 home, that's $70 a year, which is 19 cents a day in additional taxes in order to fund phase one of this project. And then the reason we started all this, or I jumped to this, was the referendum question. This is now the new text that will appear in the bond, or in the vote for the bond. Is shall the ordinance appropriating 14,380,000 and authorizing bonds and notes in the same amount for the design and construction of Groton athletic fields consisting of athletic field improvements primarily at Fitch High School, and if funds are remaining from said appropriation, allow such funds to be used at Sutton Park, Groton Middle School, and the former Clodchester Elementary School be approved. And then yes or no. So for those of you that might remember, initially we were calling some of this phase one, and then throwing in the additional schools for if money was allowed, or if there was some money left over that we could use it. We've taken out the phase one language in the actual bond question, and basically kind of lumped it all in there that we're appropriating 14 million first for athletic field improvements primarily at Fitch, and then we've thrown in all the other schools. Middle school got thrown in as well, because of the possibility of the softball field at some point down the road. So this just gives us the maximum amount of flexibility to be able to use that money as best as you see fit and as best as the council sees fit, and the RTM to that matter too, when the bond passes. So that's the new text that's been circulated, and it goes back now to the council for their finalization, and then it goes to the town clerk to start doing the process of balloting and all that sort of fun stuff.
Chad, I just have one question.
Yep.
The phone number is to whom?
Oh, right now this is bogus.
Okay.
But so I shouldn't say that. So some of this down here, the text, this is for the town clerk, and that shouldn't be 2 6s there.
Not a
This
real number.
information, yeah, this information is for the town clerk. For if there's any questions about the ordinance, it goes to the clerk. And then we will have up here right now, we've thrown in another link here. We need to do a better job of, I think, making that part of the presentation, if you will, and that more information for the fields and the project. And this is one of your agenda items, so maybe I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but we met with Mark last week, and the Park and Rec decided that they would rather host all the information on their own servers, their own sites. So we're going to be working with their new community development person, moving everything that was on Greater Groton over to Greater Groton website. Will still stay live, so all the surveys and things like that were done will still be there, but all of the data and the documentation is going to move over to the Park and Rec site, and then we'll have the link here. We'll have a QR code for it and stuff like that. But that's where all the additional information for people that want to dig into all of the presentations, listen to the recordings, and all that sort of stuff will be at the rec site link. So we'll have two. We just need to, I think right now, again, this is working draft. This needs to be better to make sure that we know people go here to get information on the project and go here to get information on the bond specifics or the referendum bond.
Cool.
So I'll send this around probably be in the morning, but I'll basically reply to the whole group so everybody has a copy of this. Like I said, please feel free to mark it up, put questions, comments, get all those back to me. I would suggest that we should probably, you can either email them directly to me, or to Mark or to both of us, but probably not to the whole group, just so we don't have a unofficial meeting if we're discussing stuff without posting it.
Okay. Good. Does anybody have any questions?
I guess, does that language for the person, the town clerk for the bond have to be on there?
Um,
I just
it
feel like
probably
someone's
doesn't,
gonna see a number and call them like and ask them about the project. Do they get
right?
a lot of calls with bond questions, I guess is.
Or maybe we need to specify that for text. Well, the full text of the bond ordinance. It's basically because this is like the real text has a bunch of other stuff with it, the whereases and all that stuff.
Okay.
And when the town puts this piece out, they have to say, if you want the rest of it, here's where you can go find it.
Okay.
So I do think we do have to have it. Do we have to have the phone number? Maybe not. But I can ask the town manager about the phone number at least and try to minimize that a little bit. Or and like I said, clarify that this is for the bond and the other is for the project per se.
It's almost like you want to say if the for questions on the full text of the bond ordinance.
Right.
Yeah. You guys can figure that out though.
We'll try to wordsmith it a little bit.
You're pros.
And like maybe, yeah, or if it can go inside that circle somehow, that way it doesn't look like it's just the end of it to be for more information.
Yeah. Good idea.
Hazel, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, that's great. I hope my internet connection's good enough. I just recommend that you put draft across this version before you send it out because I've recently been involved in something similar and somebody accidentally got it and resent it. I know we're here and
Yeah.
listening to you, but I think because of the way media works nowadays, that would be the safest thing to do.
Excellent point. I totally agree.
Thanks, Hazel. Anyone else? Okay, I think we're from what I could, and Chad, you can stop me if I'm wrong, but I tried to go through that and it was a lot of signing forms and I didn't see a whole lot of, or what I could see of anything that was quote, um, show up and do something from what I could tell for the general public.
Yeah, I would agree. We were through the RTM was the only one, and quite honestly, by the time the vote came, we felt that we hadn't gotten enough questions from the RTM to really make it look like we were really nervous that they wouldn't approve the language. And so everything from now on should be a formality, and there shouldn't be a place where we need a group of people to show up from a push the council, push an organization to approve. Right now, I think what really needs to do is over the next 2 to 3 months, figure out when are we going to do some public meetings? How are we going to invite people in? Do we just have open houses? What do we want to do as far as making sure the public has ample opportunity to learn about the project and be fully up to speed before the November 4th date?
So I will say that when I went to the town council meeting, and what was it, July 22nd? No, that doesn't make sense. August 5th. So I went to that meeting, um, and put my name on the list, but the meeting was um
Was that the meeting that got cut a little short in
it
public comment?
it got cut a little short and it was very overrun by another issue.
Yeah.
So I was not I was on the list, but I don't think they ever got to me. They didn't get past the first 3 or 4 people who were there and had their own agenda, which was fine. That's what it's all about. But I did learn afterwards, talk one guy who spoke about another subject. It wasn't about the general subject of the night. Um, but he was from the city, and he did talk about they do have the same type of idea with or they have the same uh city of Groton town council speak your mind like twice a week. Um, so I do think that I'm going to set up and go one night and go talk to them. I'm going to talk to Mark first, obviously. But I want to go just at least take 5 minutes and actually write down some notes and don't just speak from whatever flows out, which is scary sometimes. Um, but just to another avenue to let people know what's going on because this is going to show up and all of a sudden people are going to care 1 month out and because we're going to flood them with the things we talked about last week or a month ago, excuse me, with whatever we're going to do to try to talk to people. But I just think it would be, and I know that, so I'm going to try to get the right dates and try to figure that out. Um, but I am going to go do that just in as a place to start for people that probably I want to start being people informed. Um, but again, between the town of Groton Parks and Rec and Frost and Company, um, I want to make sure that we have the right place to send people because I think I'd like to like leave a pile of papers there that day and stuff like that. So, um, and as we start thinking of places that we can go and things that we can do, um, as Danny talked about when we first got on, they started the athletic, the booster club is up and running for the new school year. Sounds like things like that. So it's really, I think, one of the main probably things that we need to do next is to try to get that website locked down and start putting stuff in it so that the folks have somewhere to go to and something to look at. Again, in my opinion, and as read some of the documents that Chad and Mark sent over about things we can and can't do, um, I want that website to be informational. I mean, I'm not trying to put a poster on the front that says, this is what you have to do. Go, go, go. I want people to understand plus minus everything that we've done, um, the stuff that Frost and Ken have done with the water outflow from the middle school field. All that stuff needs to be out there. We got a letter from um, make this Groton Conservatory Group about turf. I mean, about synthetic surface. All that information that it's a place where people can go to get to make a decision that they want to make. I love the poster. I think it's great. Gives a lot of information. It's a lot of information. It's good. All right. Anybody else got anything else? I'm sorry. I was rambling on and on. Okay.
The only
Um,
question I would have is as
yep.
far as like some outreach meetings. Um, there was a time a couple years ago we got quite a good attendance, and then as we went on, the attendance trickled down a little bit. I still think it's probably worth having at least one where we just blanket and say anybody is welcome, right? And so that we open at least one to the entire public. But then I'm also thinking that it might be worth trying to do uh, a consolidated meeting where we invite in all of the heads of the different organizations, right? And so it could be the, president or vice president, some of the leadership from Groton Soccer and from youth football and from Shoreline and at least get all of them in the room, give them a concise presentation so that they know, and then they can then send the information out to all their organizations and kind of be in a room to be able to ask questions a little bit easier than a full one. Public is still welcome. If they want to invite their own membership, they certainly can. But that was one of the thoughts I had was um, that they're one of the groups that we've gotten a lot of information from and have obviously gotten a lot of support from. And I think they're going to be the key demographic to make sure they understand the proposal to be able to support or not the referendum.
I love it.
Hazel, thoughts on that? Like, I mean, it's a hard season. I know soccer is just cranking up and you're probably going to and from practices, but it's a matter of trying to find a time that we can best utilize people without just throwing them to giant meetings.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you were going to talk about this later, but is it worth, like, all of these ideas, are they on a spreadsheet somewhere? And what I think we should talk about is dividing and conquering who should attend these meetings to answer these things. Because each one of you on this committee brings a different perspective. And just for instance, for that meeting that you're talking about, I think if not everybody's into public speaking. So, but I do think like Mark Romano, people would appreciate him being there and having some FaceTime if you were having the sports clubs together. I don't know what people's availability are, but it might be worth creating a calendar and maybe who was willing to do that sort of stuff. I always love to chat. But I don't know as much as you all because you've been doing this for so long, so I don't want to give inaccurate information. But yeah, I think you could bring club leaders together. The trouble is that they already have a lot of information. I mean, you've already been sending stuff to them, and I don't know about the other clubs per se, but we've been really concisely putting it up on websites, distributing it to our players and parents. So I almost feel like maybe right now might be a better, you might be able to, you might want to wait till the end of the season. But I don't know. November's so close, so I guess I'd have to think on
Yeah.
that. Or your time might be spent better somewhere else. I think the clubs know a lot about it, and I think this flyer needs to get out for sure. But I think people would appreciate it in a email form, in a text form, better than having to go to a meeting to get it right now.
Okay.
For that,
Well, we can certainly
for
do that. I
that
mean,
group, for the sports group.
okay. Or maybe what we can do is we'll fashion it in an email as part of sending out this flyer attached to it. Urge them to be, to send it out, and then as part of that offer, if they want to have a meeting, we can set up a meeting either directly with each individual group, or we can, if there's enough interest, we can pull everybody together and do one common one that way.
Yeah, because I think over you got the Falcons, and then lacrosse, and then the little leagues are the kind of three big ones. And yeah, I can see Falcons maybe wanting some one-on-one, just that they can ask all their questions and answers, and not necessarily in a big format, or that all their specific questions, would just take up a whole meeting of the public.
All right, that's a good idea, and we can also put together kind of there isn't a good spreadsheet. There's a list right now of kind of some of that outreach talk, and we were hoping to get some more from you guys as to what you think is the best ways right now for where we are now and where we need to be in November to do that outreach. But we'll put that list out there, and then we'll also compose this email to be able to be distributed through the rec to all those leagues with the suggestion they distribute it throughout everybody else.
Okay. Anyone else?
I
Mark, go
think,
ahead.
yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
there's-
And I think social media, kind of like how, Parks and Rec's been putting things out on, about the upgrade in facilities at Pequannock Plains, things like that. I think, flooding the social media a little bit with that type of stuff, the information I think is helpful. Just putting it out there. And then, because there's so many different people who look at that stuff, and even if they don't thoroughly read through it, hopefully when it comes time for the referendum, when they're going to vote or whatever, oh yeah, that's right, I remember seeing that, yeah, I want to vote, or whatever it may be. But I think social media would be a good avenue to utilize as well. I know for like our sports night, I put the flyer that we created for I think it was the 13th. I put that in everybody's packet who came there. It was a pretty good turnout, and everybody received that information as well. So, I'm trying to put that out there, but I think social media would be the way as well to get that information out.
Would you like us to do anything more specific for your coaches? Like, here's the flyer, but then also here's the quick synopsis so that you can distribute to the coaches with the hope that they send it through their parents as well? Or is the flyer enough?
No, I think that would not be a bad idea. I think also, setting up I can set it up a coaches meeting for, basically all the coaches, and they would come, and like you said, kind of, we can give them a, somewhat of a synopsis of everything, and then give them a flyer to send out to all their teams. Now every team, at least, starting this season, is going to be using Parent Square. So anybody who's connected to that would get that information, whether I put it out there or coaches put out individually to their team. So, and also, I can send it out to the middle school as well through the same app. And then I can have the superintendent send it out to the district as well. So, I think utilizing all those types of avenues is going to be crucial.
Agreed. And we can do a coaches meeting if you think it's helpful and it's not getting in the way of the current season's coaches, but I'm happy to do it again and really just go through quickly with them. It doesn't have to be my part of it doesn't have to be very long. I can basically say, met last time, this is what we talked about. Here's phase one, this is what's going forward. Here's
Yep.
what's included directly at the high school, and then let them ask questions and get on their way.
Well, I'm trying to set up a meeting with all the coaches coming up in the next couple weeks
Okay.
about a different topic. So maybe that would, if we could put that in with it, if
Sure.
everybody there, I think that would be, it would be probably sometime, I would say, second week in September, maybe.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Let me know and we can
yeah,
do
that's
it.
what I'm looking for. So that might be a way to get that out. And then, we get some time to continue to push it, but yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And I think, I mean, what I've heard from some of the user group, like Falcons, um, and some of the other, like how the high school facilities will affect them. Like, all right, can we have championships games there now? Or, like what's the availability going to be to them? Is it similar to a town field that it's free, or is there cost involved? It's a little bit early to probably get into the weeds of exactly what that is. Like, you wouldn't know that it's $50 if there is a rate, but like generally, what's the thought process there of, is it gonna be accessible at all, or is it strictly a school field? I mean, I think they've gotten a little bit of turf time, so they're starting to get used to that a little bit. But just what does that mean? Does that open it up, or no? There's so many groups that need that time that that's it would be restricted. But phase two, yes, open up, but just where the thought process is there to be
I
prepared to answer that question anyway.
I don't disagree with that, but I think so. I've seen it a lot over the last couple years, with my grandson and granddaughter playing and what other towns do with their fields. Um, and I think that that's kind of out of this. The utilization is kind of like, yes, we're helping to make it better, but it's really kind of not part of this. I wouldn't say it's part of our task, um, to identify how and when it can be used. I mean, I think it's an issue that has to be solved between the school board, the Parks and Rec department, because there's other towns that I'm telling you, they use those turf fields a heck of a lot more than the one we have, as we've talked about, and with their youth programs. And I don't just mean pickup games. They're using them for events, that have nothing to do with the high schools. So I think we want to answer those questions, but I think I totally agree that it's down the road. Those answers are, and to try to sell it to them, hey, we're going to build this new turf field at the high school and you get to use it. That's kind of going to be that's tough for you to say today or next week or in a month. Because I think there's a lot of wickets that we have to go, that has to be done through the town and all those other people to figure that out. But, but I agree. There's a lot of questions. as this happens on usage. I think it's a big question because that should be a selling point for all of us. This is a selling point for the whole thing. You know, is the more fields, the more they can be used at the right times. You know, we know which fields have the priority, if you would. You know, you can't go onto the high school football field at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. Got it. In the middle of the school year. But can I go on it, you know, in the middle of summer? Who knows? But anyway,
No, I honestly, I think that's a good point, and I agree. I think that those are some details that we probably do need to talk about before we get to, you know, because I think people are going to ask that, and you know, the way the facility is currently set up there is not is totally different than any other town's facility. You know what I mean? No, most towns, it's access, they get the track with it, you know, so on and so forth. People walk on it. People go, you know, it's not as closed in and locked, I guess you could say locked as much as, you know, our facility. But I do think, you know, the discussion of, you know, what does that look like? I mean, if we're going to rent it out, let's just hypothetically say to an outside group, are we going to have a supervisor there? I think, you know, I mean, things like that. But I think that is part of the discussion. So then we can say, well, no, we are going to open it up to outside groups, but we are going to have a point person there for all types of usage, whether it's, you know, myself or someone from Parks and Rec or whatever it may be. You know, and I think, but that's a fair question, I think, and I think that is something that needs to be considered for sure, because at the end of the day, like I've seen it with the turf now, you know, we unlocked it during the day and things like that, so kids can go on it, and it's definitely getting used more. But you know, then I go up there, they got the bench in the middle of the field, they got the goals in the, you know what I mean? Like there's a give and take with it too. I think, you know, if used properly, obviously, yeah, we're gonna do it. But you know, when things start, you know, kind of, and they leave the stuff out on the field, like that's not what that's. It kind of turns you what. Then you say, then you start questioning, well, why am I unlocking it? Why am I now when people can't even take care of it correctly? You got gum all over the field, and you know, think there's a grinder left on the turf. Like those are examples that, you know, that are happening. So I think those discussions honestly need to happen before we get to that point when people start asking those questions.
good. Something to think about. Good. Okay. Um, I think we talked about the second and third part, the status of the website and the QR code and the distribution of the referendum. We kind of talked about that stuff. Um, Anything else? So, Rich, I know you said you had a couple questions. How did we do with your questions?
You did okay, and this kind of follows what you've been talking, and this is mainly for Chad. So I'm going to be the optimist, and I'm going to say, okay, November 4th comes and the referendum passes. Um, what happens in the 6 months after that? How does the process work now that the referendum has been passed? And where does it go? You know, from there, does the town council get another shot at it? Does when the money comes in and all of that? I know. So if you could just address that a little bit and in a really general way, I know, you know, we don't specifics, but what happens?
Yeah, then the fun really starts, hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what should happen is if it passes, you know, early November, hopefully by middle of November, a couple of weeks later, we can say, okay, time to get all the contracts in place for all of that design work that needs to be done, the engineers and everything to get all the stormwater done. Uh, Normally we expect the design and permitting in big general terms. We normally say plan for about a year of design and permitting. We're a decent way there, so I would like to think that we could be there sooner than that. So, you know, very optimistically, I would say, you know, can we aim to be in permitting in 6 months? The permitting probably takes, at least 2, probably 3 months, because we're gonna have to go through wetlands, we're gonna have planning and zoning. It's, there's gonna be public hearings and stuff like that and notices, but, so I would say, 6, 9 months, ideally, hopefully we don't get to a year, but probably within a year, we're out to bid. And then assuming bids come in where we want them to, we'll be doing some cost estimating along the way just to do kind of gut checks to make sure we're still in the right ballpark. Out to bid. Bidding normally takes 2 months, 2 to 3 months, and then construction and we'll have to see where we are in the construction season because we don't want to, we're going to be looking at how do we minimize downtime, especially at the high school. And everybody always wants their track and field done during summer. And so that's one of those things that we either will, depending on where we are, we might look at it and say, is it worth disturbing the track and having it sooner and having to figure out how do we share with Grosso Tech or somebody else for a season and go for it during the school year, or do we wait 6 months to get to the next summer or something like that and then do major construction during the summer. But I would say in big general terms, 6 to 12 months for permitting and design and permitting, and then you're probably at a year of construction as well, and then we just have to factor in a winter in there with the construction.
And let's even look, what about then the going to referendum for
second
phase
time.
2?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Do we start that? Do we start that all, in budget season?
It becomes the question, literally this time next year, right? We have to be doing this exact same process we're doing right now for phase 2. And I think that's probably the first question we have to ask in November also, right? Because November is going to be great. It passed, get busy, or if it didn't pass, what are we going to do different? How do we do this? How do we gear back up? But either way, in a perfect world, and it'll depend a little bit on the council, because you will have a council that's different than you have today. And so they have to then come December, January timeframe, vote again to go out for the next referendum and keep the process going, or do they vote to make it, instead of every year, is it every other year, or something along those lines? So yeah, and the other thing I would say, just throwing out there that we've thought of a couple times, is that grant that I believe is due in December, that we could get somewhere between 5 to 10 million potentially towards Gloucester. So if this passes in November and we can loop that in and then go after that grant, that probably changes things a little bit with the next referendum as well.
Is that grant being awarded in December? Or is that when the paperwork goes in
No,
to get the grant?
that's when the paperwork goes in. They normally award pretty quickly because they do awards twice a year. So their funding process is pretty quick, but it's still probably a month or two before we know for sure. But I would say if it's positive, if the referendum passes in November, I think we'd want to be pushing to get that grant submission in that December timeframe. Maybe we find out in January, February, and then that changes the numbers for a potential next referendum.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Good questions, because it would be great. It'd be great, but the public should know that it probably, 2 years is probably a comfortable time frame before we have something that we're playing on, as a new facility. I'd love to say we could do it sooner. There's a couple of things we could do to try to change it. We could work with a direct contractor and do a state bidding process that shortens the bid process down and things like that. But at this point, I just wouldn't want to give too much optimistic hope that, it's not going to be 12 months from now that we have a new field, but it might be a little sooner than 24 months.
Seems fair to me.
Hmm.
Anybody got anything else? So I think we've spoken on everything, and I think we I think the big action item, obviously, for the Parks and Rec this and Chad is we got the poster out there so we could get that locked in and send it around, so we can start using that to get out to social media, to get out the things to wherever we're going to start doing and make flyers and stuff like that, so we can start pushing the word about where to go to look into what we're doing. So that's my big take from what we're doing today. Hazel, go ahead.
Is it worth translating it into Spanish and having a Spanish flyer? I do that with some of the other stuff for my work, and I think it might be useful, especially for social media too. We do have users that are Spanish speaking, so
Sure.
I don't know, it couldn't hurt. And if you need a translator, I know one.
Perfect. Yeah, it's probably a good idea to do it. I know we had translators doing live translation at some of our public meetings,
Right.
and we've had some of the flyers translated as well. So probably a worthwhile thing to do as well. Good idea.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. If not, our next meeting would be scheduled for September 18th. Which is
Sorry
the
to interrupt you,
third.
Frank. This is
Oh, sorry.
from Groton. This is Rich from Groton. Can you hear me?
Oh, hey, Rich. How are you?
Hello.
I'm sorry we missed you.
Oh, I've been a bit late. I just comment about translating. If you want help translating the flyers, Hazel, let me know. I speak Spanish, so.
Good to know.
Glad to know you're there, Rich. Sorry, I can't find you anywhere, but that's just because.
I
Oh,
think
there you
he
are.
showed up as Hazel.
Oh, okay. Cool. That works.
Why we have two Hazels.
we got enough GSD representing tonight with Hazel. But I thought I'd
Yes.
chime in and try to agree with everything that's been going on. But that's yeah, it all sounds really positive anyway. Thanks, guys.
Hey, Rich, just for could you just spell your last name for purposes of
Attendance.
attendance?
Yeah, Loach, like coach, but with an L.
Thank got it.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks for calling in. Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Yep. All right. So September 18th. And I think that will be our next meeting. We've kind of discussed, I think, what we needed to talk about.
Great. I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Danny, second.
Anybody.
I can. Frank will. Any discussion? No. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for all your help. We're doing a
Take care,
great
guys.
job. We'll see you in a
Good
couple
night.
weeks. Thank you, everybody.
Cheers.
See you in a month. Thanks, Rich. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.